Hi, I'm Trent Bacon from My Risk Advisor, and today we're going to be talking TPD severity with Acenda. So today I'm joined with Gerard Kerr. He's the Chief Executive for Individual Business at Acenda. Hey Gerard, how are you?
Good, Trent. Great. Delighted to be here, Trent. How you going?
Very well, thank you. So thanks for joining us. So yeah, a bit of a movement in the TPD market at the moment, with a few product providers bringing out new TPD products to cater for a lot of different things. So we're looking to get them on so that we can teach advisors or help advisors understand what they are and how they work and why they're actually bringing them out. So Joe, can you tell us in simple terms what your TPD severity product is doing and why you've done it?
Look, the new severity TPD is fundamentally a new option. Like, it's a new choice. It's going to sit side by side the current ones, the any and own occupation TPD that people know for many, many years. And like the name suggests, it is a severity level of TPD we're looking at. You know, there is a require of severity around the total nature and the permanency nature of the TPD. I guess an evolution in how TPD has evolved over the market, but we tried to put in what we would call far more objective assessment criteria around the permanency of a disability and from a physical and mental health perspective. So that's what would drive it. It's a choice option to sit side by side. TPD has been in the market for many, many years, right? We brought this into the Australian market. It's global, and it's probably about 30 or 40 years old. And like anything else that's that old, you normally need to give it a bit of refresh. So it was done at a different time. And I think it's fair to say over those 30 or 40 years, the way medical treatment has evolved, diagnosis, symptoms, awareness of them, but also more important, the nature of work. I mean, the mere fact we're doing this podcast, it didn't exist 30 or 40 years ago when we created TPD. So we need to create a definition that reflects today's modern contemporary world, not only from a medical point of view, but also from a work point of view. One of the things we noticed is the assessment of these illnesses was getting more and more kind of subjective. And, people opinion, a GP's opinion, these types of things. We said we can't be doing that. We need to get it back to its origin, get it back to that clarity around when something is total and when something is permanent. And hence we just went back, created something, worked with the medics and came up with this choice of a definition.
Let's jump straight into that. What is that definition at a broad level? And can we talk through a bit of the difference between that own and any occupation and what that new assessment will like?
It's a good, at its simplistic level, the newer one makes a reference to medical diagnostic sort of benchmarking. So we have a thing called, it's called a PEERS, a bit of an acronym, but it's a psychiatric impairment rating scale. So in other words, it's a published medical sort of external publication, and it has various levels of severity in there. So basically, if you look at those levels, it will give you sort of symptoms to expect depending on how severe the level is. So we just point our definition to a level of severity in there and a percentage discount. So it's taken the sort of objectivity over into that medical publication. And there's psychologists, psychiatrists who contributed a huge amount of that. They kind of know this subject, so they're best to sort of set the levels. We also have one for physical. It's called a whole person impairment. And again, all those medical specialists have put these percentages of disability into this publication, and they give you a level. So it's kind of got this reference sort of publications for us to point towards. Whereas our current definitions, Trent, they talk about inability to do your duties of your own or any occupation, training, education. You can see where this whole subjectivity, well, how are your duties? And is everybody's duties the same? And, so we're getting a different sort of environment. We try to clear that up as much as possible. But we know it's new, Trent. Like we know we put in something new, and we know new takes a little bit of time to absorb, get comfortable with. Like anything we do that's new outside of insurance, it takes you a while to get used to it. So we know we've got this sort of educational piece, comfort piece to build up.
It's why I've got a job. Realistically, if people could get insurance themselves, they would probably do it. But there's, added nuances every day, especially when everyone's bringing out new products.
Risks are changing every day. I agree. Yeah. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about those impairment scales a little bit. So there is what I've been reading, 6 main areas of function within mental health. So it's not you're mentally ill and you're unable to work, but there's 6 different areas, and you need to come up with a special rating across the board of all of those. So you could be really impaired in one area and not impaired in the other and get your benefit paid, or you could be partially impaired in some of those areas but not actually get your benefit paid either. So it's it's more that total impairment.
Rather than getting into each level one by one, I think the real purpose in some ways of referring into this is actually to get clarity on what we call the persistency or the permanency of the symptoms, particularly in a mental health environment. Because look, we all know there is a raft of illnesses falling under this umbrella of mental health. Like it's widespread, right? And it's great that we've been evolving, getting greater understanding. But one of the areas we tried to get and using this peer scale to get greater clarity is that thing around persistency and permanency. Various mental illness can be episodic. They can be really severe. Thankfully, some patients will recover, treatment works, all the various sort of levers that can be used and improvement happens, and that's great. But there are those ones that over time, to get to that point where the psychiatrist or the doctor, the specialist says, they might say to you, Trent, this is it. You've hit a new plateau. We've tried this, we've tried that, and we believe now your symptoms are such that, unfortunately, this is your new norm. That one around that persistency permanency is the critical one that we're trying to align up with what the definition was and should be supposed to do. So it's in the 30%. So it is quite a significant level, but that's what the benefit is. It's for those serious and significant illnesses. And that's what we're getting, hopefully, the clarity from by linking into that scale.
Yeah, I was reading a study from you guys, Acenda and AIA, that did together with their TPD claimants. Now, a few caveats. It was done on a few different products, like group products and things like that. But 20% of those clients that had been paid a TPD benefit had actually returned to work, and 11% were planning or had returned to work or were in market to return to work, which, if you look at the name, total and permanent disablement, if 30% aren't exactly that, the product's probably not doing its job.
Look, to take it back to the earlier conversation, 30 or 40 years ago, that was the intent of it. That's why we specifically chose those words of total and permanent. And I personally find if one pauses and just uses those words, total and permanent, you go, wow, like they are really unfortunate illnesses that you would all of us hope never to get, but they happen. They are severe, and your comment there earlier on, the fact that somebody is back at work, then yes, we do have to question whether the permanency aspect was what happened here. It could have been total, and people get total and temporary, but the permanency one, if someone's back at work, then yes, we've not been implementing the definition appropriately in those cases.
Yeah, when we look at what actually gets claimed on for TPD, mental health is a massive one. But when you think total and permanent disablement, you think of that picture of someone in a wheelchair. It's not the case that that's being the only sole payout these days. It probably was 40 years ago, and that's what it was built for.
Yeah.
That change of disability is completely changed as it goes by.
And I think the important thing, Trent, it's not just mental health. Like there's a lot of illnesses that equally through the advancements in our sort of medical sort of insights are equally going through the cycles of up and down. And then, a classic one will be, musculoskeletal. People go through musculoskeletal ups and down, and sometimes musculoskeletal affects your mental resilience, for want of a better description, and the two of them become intertwined. So one's illnesses quite often aren't singular for some of these when you're getting into the complex. So again, like we're trying to look through the intent of this benefit by not just a single cause. We're looking at all the multiple causes and how do we sort of get something that goes across all those nuances, knowing that they would change in time as well, but still have hopefully that degree of clarity around those words of total and permanent. Yeah.
Awesome. So we've touched on the mental side of things, so the peer, but the other assessment is the whole person impairment, which is more the physical side of things.
Yeah.
So 15 body systems is what I'm reading. Similar sort of setup if, certain impairments rate at different levels and getting to that magic number of 30% for that payout.
Some of this, I believe, is like in workers' comp, that environment has been using it. I mean, this is the whole person impairment is the category of the physical impairment elements. And you're right, it would look at a number, various parts of one's body. And if elements aren't working in those parts of the body, with your right arm, left arm, back, and gets an assessment of how severe it is and makes a call on, we think that therefore is causing you X% of disability at a whole person level. It's not taking your whole person and dividing you up by 20%, certain parts of your body function actually have a far greater influence than other parts, so I recall something like if you're right-handed and you can't use parts of your right hand because of what has happened to you, well, that will have quite a big percentage impact because of your dependency on that to do whatever your day-to-day activities is. So it's not like just because your finger and your thumb are only about 1% of your body, it could have a much bigger percentage impact depending on what has happened there.
Yeah, being right-handed, I'm left-handed, but being right-handed, your ability to do stuff like
correct,
grab stuff, all that sort of stuff, drive, is compared to if I lost if your right hand, your left hand is going to be a high percentage because you have to retrain and relearn how to do stuff. And
compared to your little toe and your left foot, I don't know, maybe I'm just saying that type. There's a lot of medical research has gone behind this trend. I think the point we're sort of coming back to is a lot of medical research has been happening by people very qualified at this. I think for us as an industry, we've got it available to us. Why shouldn't we tap into it? Because we're dealing with, illnesses that are changing. Why not tap into the people who are closest to us and tap into their expertise to help us, with our claims and our clarity.
Awesome. So we'll talk medical, bit of actuary stuff. One of the main things some insurers we're speaking to about this side of things is the actual payment and how it goes out. So the Acenda product is that one payment. You will meet the assessment and you're paid. Was there any consideration to have it staged over, say, a 5 or a 6 year period? And if it was, why have we gone the other way and just gone one off?
Oh, definitely you look at different ways and I think that's a good thing that the market does look at different ways because it goes back to I think having choice is a good thing. Our way of going this way was in part to stay close to how the definition has traditionally worked. I might say I've laboured on the point around total impairmency, but when one has got to that stage where you're sitting there with your specialist and whoever they are, and they're just going, this is your new world. This is it. This is as good as it gets. You fundamentally are on a different sort of path now going forward. So therefore, the financial support to help you reset and go that way, TPD feels like it should be delivering then, because if we've got the call on permanency right, and we've got the call on total right, what are we expecting to be different in 1 year's time or 2 years' time if permanency has been delivered, right? Very hard to call, but that was our logic. We also believe that, income protection is there to support the journey as your temporary payments, if you're unable to do your own. So therefore, you've got that element of support before you get there. But our sort of simplistic sort of approach was, we still believe total impairment events happen. They still happen. They are still fundamentally changing your way of life. We should be still making a lump sum payment when that severity happens. So, let's try ensure we support the claimant as much as possible with that payment. If they have, dare I say it, adhered to the terms that we've set out, they should have the payment, and they can adjust their lifestyle accordingly with greater comfort that they've got the full payment.
So when comparing it to that own or any occupation product, probably the first thing most advisors are going to look at is the cost. Yeah. What are we looking at in terms of a discount for this product, if there is one?
Yeah, roughly, look, and different ages and different amounts, but look, we're roughly in the scale of about 40% difference between, the own and any criteria, depending where you are, and what this new severity one is. And some of that is we touched earlier on some of the claims being paid in the own or any environment today that one wouldn't otherwise have done. And that has caused the price of TPD to go up over the last number of years. And unfortunately, I don't think we're out of the woods yet. So we've had those rates going up. By us bringing in our view, TPD back to its, I wouldn't say quite to its roots, but back to what its core purpose of that severity total impairment situation. We know the volume of claims, or we're hoping and forecasting the volume of claims should be less than what's happening today. And by doing that, we're able to pass those costs back on. Absolutely, we know that there's a difference between, but if we get back to the nature of those claims that were there in the original 30 or 40 years ago purpose in those, we know that there's a lower cost involved, and we're keen to pass that on to to the clients and to the advisors to have that conversation so that they can see the pros and cons of either choice.
Yeah, we're certainly in phase one of these new products. Do you think long term that they'll actually replace the current products and the old products will get phased out? Do you think you'll get your hand forced by APRA?
No, sorry. First on that one, I'm certainly of the view we should be taking carriage of our own destination as an industry. We certainly had APRA intervene on income protection, and there's learnings for all of us as a result of that. But I think we should be a sort of more agile and brave enough industry to take carriage of solutions ourselves. And let's hope we carry on. And that's why we were very keen to get ours out into the market. And, we applaud our other insurers who are following with their choices, because we've got to get them out there to demonstrate there is alternatives. I think until we had put them out, there wasn't enough alternatives, yet we were talking about enough. So I think let's get them out there first. Do I think in time? It's possible, Trent. I think if we continue to see the deterioration and the volume of claims coming on, and we've already got a lot of in-force business, every insurer has, and we can't tighten them because that's the law. But if the claims continue to go, we have to keep applying rates. Maybe we have to face up to choices like that. I mean, we faced up to an income protection. We went back in many ways, you could argue, to what the purpose of income protection was with the changes, because they just had to reflect what's happening in today's environment, whether it's medical diagnosis or working environment. And if you need to adjust, then sometimes, yes, it may well be the best way forward, because you want as many people to have this cover as possible. Like, we don't want this to be a declining group of people because of affordability. That's not a good outcome. We've got to monitor it. It'll be a classic. Let's just monitor it. But if
let's see if phase one fix it by having the double products, and
it's phase one, and then let's and it may well be through advisor comfort evolving, the market just moves to it itself. And we've seen that in other products. So, but definitely, Trent, we should be solving this one ourselves. We should have enough opportunities ourselves to solve this.
Yeah, I think there's enough insurers that have taken action on this one, where everyone was probably sitting on their heels a little bit for the IP changes. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of different thoughts of ways of going about it. Obviously makes our job harder, but it also gives us that point of difference to client for client basis.
Yeah, and it's slightly different to income protection because the volume of income protection was greater, because people go in and out of work. TPD, because of that backdrop of very severe, very total, and very permanent, the volume of them, but they're much more costly because they're bigger sum insured. So therefore, there's variations in there. So it's harder to make a call on a trend versus volatility when the volumes of incidents are lower. But I think we definitely have a trend. Definitely.
So we'll jump into the advisor side of things. So now that we've got the two TPD policies, how do you think advisors will or should be structuring it in terms of their level of coverage? We're talking the needs of a client. What do you think are the things that should be going on that severity, and what should be staying at home on that the regular TPD that we've been using?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, we're already starting to see some business being written already, and even though it's only out a matter of sort of a couple of months now, so we're seeing severity sort of being packaged alongside own. The amounts are varying, by some advisors saying different amounts, and some of it could be on their discussion with the customer's needs and the events in their mind that they're trying to cover. Some of it's a budgeting thing. What's the budgeting they want to work with? They might kind of go to the customer hey, you need 1 million, and then they see what the cost for own is, and they go, oh, that's a lot, and they might get into a budgeting discussion that way. We're seeing it. It's quite varied and quite individualized. Advisors are getting varying degrees of comfort with it, and what we intend to do, Trent, is start to talk to some of those advisors of how they view it and how they've got comfort. And I think the shared learning will be good. We're keen to tap into their sort of shared learning, because we see it as you can mix it, and budgeting is an important one, and your appetite for different events. That's its sort of core. And that's why it sits well with own and any. But as people have more conversations on it, then there's more learnings to be had. So we'll be keen in sort of, as we get into next year, to understand them a bit more and maybe share them around a bit. Be good.
We haven't used it yet. It will be something we dive into probably in the new year. But yeah, I was thinking more around that medical space. So if you're getting that severity payment, well, your medical is going to be higher than your average case of TPD that's, doesn't have those ongoing medicals. So maybe we're looking at medical and extra expense costs for carers, that sort of stuff.
Correct.
In that space where your debt and other stuff, things that you may want to keep, probably stay in that regular.
Yeah, and like you said, Marshall has had a few sort of webinars on it, and said to people like, yeah, it's something where people will look at one sort of, I suppose it's like your own risk appetite for severity, risk tolerance. So in other words, where you decide how much, I'm okay with that event happening to me, but I'm not okay with that one or that one. Therefore, that's the one in particular I want to make sure I'm covered against. So it's and then there's just stability in the premiums. Like, that's another thing that obviously, as you know, advisors are very keen to get greater stability from us, as insurers. I don't think it's any trade secret. We're still working through getting to that point on own and any. So where we feel we've got enough in the rates. We're still not there yet, I don't think, as an industry, but we'll have a little bit more sort of comfort with the new severity one coming through. So, but like I said, we're looking forward to sharing with what advisors are learning on it. But really pleased, we're getting early encouraging signs and good green shoots.
Yeah, the next part of the project is obviously the compliance side of things. How do we recommend it? How do we have the right trade-off discussions? Because the last thing advisors want is claim on their own and any, but they don't meet their 30% another way, and making sure the clients understand. Is there anything that Acenda has that we can be putting in advice documents? Any specific ways to be explaining things?
Yeah, I would say reach out to us. We've done a lot to get to where we are. We've created sort of suggested statement of advice warnings. We've got a lot of flyers around what the differences are, so that people go into understanding the differences. I think you're right. We need to make sure we educate people as much as possible at the differences between the definitions of disability. So we've done absolutely, I would say, reach out to us, reach out to your contact in Acenda, whether it's your BDM, any of them. They would be absolutely delighted to talk to you about this. Yeah.
Probably the last question I had was around sums insured. So we've seen debt prices or debt values for mortgages go through the roof in Australia. So most people are touching on that 3 mil industry average, depending on if they're living in Melbourne, especially in Sydney. Is this severity product going on top of that 3 mil average, 3 mil maximum, or is it going to be incorporated within it?
It's incorporated within it for now. Because it's early days, we just want to stay within the existing one. We want to sort of move this in a considered manner. Like at the moment, we just want to get the topic out there first before we start to worry about big sums insured. And look, the vast majority of what we write, Trent, is not in those realms of 3 and 4 or 5 million. They're less common than your $1 million, your 500,000, your core offers. And they're the ones we're concentrating on getting right and supporting the most. The bigger ones, we'll talk on them on an individual basis just because of the exceptional nature of them. And we don't get me wrong, sorry, I do know certain advisors will deal with them more routine than others. But if I take a market view, it's not the most common one. We'll continue to monitor the maximum sums insured, and so look, some of it's a risk appetite. But for now, it's understanding first rather than moving too far on the sum insured amounts. And look, we also know advisors package up IP and TPD as well, so we're also looking at those packages as well. The disability exposure, for want of a better description.
Before going through most of the things that I wanted to discuss today, is there anything that we have missed off our agenda that you want the people to know about the severity product?
Let's just look. If I wrap up and summarize it, it's new. right? We know it's new, but we firmly believe that it's a really, really good reset, and it's a really good balance of really what the words are in terms of total impermanency, right? Like if you think about the conversation we just had over the last sort of half an hour, that it does ring back to that, but it's new, and it's something I would encourage advisors to look at. I mean, we are very much of the view, the more questions we get on that, the more people discuss on this, the more minds we have contributing to it. And I think then we as an industry are better for it. So I would encourage people to ask questions. We believe it's a big help to the industry. We believe it's a big help to advisor to give solutions depending on sort of their individual customer needs. Giving choices and alternatives has got to be better than giving bad news on pricing all the time. And the last thing I would say, we still believe the benefit exists. In other words, total and permanent events do happen. They are awful. They are catastrophic for those involved. But thankfully, we are still there to support the advisor and the client when they happen by keeping this benefit going.
Yeah, it's a good point. Where, as an industry, we're trying to make sure we're still here for those permanent disablements, not cancelling the product altogether.
We'd like to just get that balance back, because, like I said, we believe as many people as possible should have cover. It's just one of our purposes as an organisation, and the more people that have cover, the more we help the industry overall. And the less people that have it, well, then the less that's in the pool, and that's not good for the health of the overall community.
Very good. So, yeah, what I'd say is for anyone listening that wants to find out more is reach out to your Acenda BDM in whichever state you are. They'll be well equipped with the information you need, and take it from there.
Yeah, they'd be delighted to chat. They certainly would.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me today, Gerard. It was really great to talk all things TPD severity.
Delighted. Thank you, Trent. Really good questions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thanks to our listeners or our viewers if you're watching on YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, there will be a link below or in our channel, and there'll be more episodes on many other things that you may be interested in. Thank you.